always like to start off with a prayer because things just go better that way. So, dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for each and every person that's here. We thank you for the Thrivalist. We just ask for your blessing on each and every person that's helped to organize this, bring it to fruition. We thank you for the cool weather. We thank you for all the lessons learned here today. And we just ask for your hand of blessing on that, Lord Jesus, that you direct the right people to the right instruction, and that you'd make those lessons stay with them, Lord, and that you just bless this time, make it extremely beneficial. We ask in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right. Welcome, everybody. So this is going to be a presentation from ARC, stands for American Reconstruction Concepts. We are a veteran-owned and operated training company, actually based out of Spokane, Washington is what we say, but I live like 15 minutes from here. So cool that they have the Thrivalist here. We've been here the last 2 years. It was just so much fun. This time we don't have a canopy set up. We're not doing other things with our booth, but we do have information here in case anybody is interested. So what we do a lot. We actually have like 14 different classes, and all of them are either day courses, multi-day courses. And what our focus is either on empty hand self-defense, or we do a lot of gunfighting training, which this is a part of. Or we also do a lot of survival and S.E.R.E type courses. Who's familiar with S.E.R.E, the acronym, S.E.R.E? That was my primary job in the Air Force. Got out about 3 years ago. So I was a S.E.R.E specialist, and our job was to train anybody who's high risk of isolation. They went through a 3-week school in the military, stand for survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. So basically our job was to help people try to remember on their worst day, and this is usually like 7 years from the time they go through the school. On their worst day ever, when they're stuck behind enemy lines, how do they actually survive? How do they evade a much larger enemy force? And then if they actually do get rolled up, hopefully they don't, hopefully we did our job so they can actually evade them. But if they do get rolled up, then how do they resist interrogation, and how do they escape from there and then ultimately get home, return with honor? That was our mission set. Those guys in the DoD who taught that school. And then I got out with several of my buddies. We've got about 8 different contract instructors within the company. So basically what we do is we start up a travel and train model. So we've trained classes all the way down from Georgia to Nevada to Montana, North Dakota, mostly in the Pacific Northwest and across the US. Our main flagship course though, however, has been really taken off this year, and that is held at a resort near Northport. Anybody know where Northport's at? Tiny little out of the way. Did you guys know there's a resort up there? It's just coming online. So we know the owners were on the ground floor of starting a 3-day experience, and we ran a bunch of beta tests last year. So we just launched it early this year, and it is called the Gray Man Academy. So basically what we try to do is we try to unpack a special set of skills for people who need those skills whenever they're traveling overseas and they're in high risk areas. They want to protect themselves and their families. We are set up to help them with hostage prevention, fighting without any kind of weapons, empty hand self-defense, and defensive gunfighting, which this is actually a part of. So what you guys are gonna see here in the next hour is defensive gunfighting primer, basically how to be most effective with your everyday carry, and most importantly, your handgun. We're gonna be talking about tactics, different tools of the trade, and then practices, hopefully that you guys will be set up for success. You can go be equipped with better dry fire drills afterwards. By the way, we also have a PDF, so if you guys want to jump on our email list at the end, I can send that to you so you have 10 dry fire drills. It's our free gift to you, no charge. We just need your email, okay? So that's the hook, all right? So that's kind of who we are, what we do. And then, so this is the company, Defensive Handgun One. Our goal is to always help increase people's capability in defensive encounters. All right. Whenever we enhance your capability, that boosts your confidence, which in turn also can help with your quality of life. Those are the 3 things that we're really focused on, and you'll see that throughout. So in this lesson, what we're first going to talk about is the pyramid of capability, basically the way we put on skills. And this could be applicable to anything that we're doing, but we're going to be focusing on defensive gunfighting today. Then we're going to go over a quick safety brief because everybody should understand that. And this is also integral part of our Handgun 1. So the first course that we teach, we go through all the main safety things, excluding the things on the range, because we're not going to do any live fire today, right? No live fire? Hopefully not today. All right, good. So we don't need to go over those things, but just the universal firearm safety rules. Principles of effective gunfighting. These are things that have gone down throughout the ages, from the Spartans to the Roman centurions to all throughout history. These are the things that made them most effective, and they have been honed and cultivated for today's warfighters. We're gonna go through it. Weapon familiarization. So if you are not familiar with most modern day handguns, you'll be a little bit more so after the introduction today. Everyday carry considerations and upgrades. What should you do with your handgun? Where should you carry it? What other ancillary gear should you have with it? How to set that up for success. Then we're gonna go over the core 3 of stance, grip, and a little bit on the vision. And then depending on how much time we have, we might go over some dry fire rules covering our draw stroke. So our draw stroke is everything. By the way, I have an inert gun for you guys today so that I can talk about things. I can even have my gun pointing this way, and it's not unsafe because all this thing shoots is a laser. All right, so it cannot shoot a firearm. So I might be waving around and using different illustrative principles, but it's not the same as a live weapon, so we're not gonna treat it exactly the same. Everybody cool with that? Awesome. If you feel unsafe, there's the door. You can walk. No, I'm just kidding. Like, let me know, all right? So that's basically it. We're gonna go over some draw stroke principles at the end. All right, sweet. So let's start off with setting the context. This is the capability pyramid, and this is something that we basically constructed to kind of give you guys a frame of reference on what's most important, because most people generally kind of inverse this and they get it backwards. But the foundation should be our mindset, the way we think about things, our mentality as it relates to defensive gunfighting. Guys, if you're not ready to pull the trigger in your own mind, then what are you doing carrying a gun to potentially draw down on and burn somebody to the ground in the event of a critical life situation? Why would you carry that gun if you're never going to utilize it? Some people do, and then they do something half-hearted on the day, in the moment, and it leads towards very bad results. So I'm an advocate. If you are not prepared to take another human life, you do you, all right? But if you're not, then don't carry the tools to be able to do that, because if you use them on the day, halfway is worse than none at all. And a lot of people get themselves in trouble that way. So I respect it if that's not you. However, everything starts with mentality. So the way you think about yourself, the way you think about problems, these are things that if you have the right mentality, you're not going to be your own worst enemy shooting yourself in the foot. Most people do not start with mentality whenever it comes to building a new skill, but it is the foundation. If you have the right mentality, everything else goes from there. Tactics is next. What do we mean by tactics? Who has a good definition of tactics? Anybody? You, ma'am, in the back. Tactics. Anybody have a definition of tactics? What do you think of, Ron?
I don't have a good answer yet.
You're good. You're good.
Think about it.
Your method.
Your method. Yes, sir. It's the how we do what we do. So skills are what we're doing, but the tactics are how we're going to implement that. Tactics trump skills, because if you have a superior tactic, but you're not the most skilled, you still have an advantage over somebody else. Somebody who illustrates this very, very well is actually Wild Bill Hickok in the Old West. Everybody familiar with him? You guys know how he died? How'd he die? Wild Bill Hickok. Shot in the head from behind playing poker. He actually had aces over eights, which is called dead man's hand in poker. Yeah, that's where that came from. But he had his back to the door. Some coward came in and shot him in the back of the head. Wild Bill Hickok was legendary in the Old West. You know why? One of the reasons was in every classic good Western movie, there's always a showdown on Main Street. Wild Bill actually did a showdown with some guy who thought he was better than him, who was a criminal that he was going up against. And this kid comes out of his holster hot and fast, bam, 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 fired all 6 rounds, missed him completely. Wild Bill takes his time, draws his long Colt 45, and bam, one shot, the guy was dead. All right, he was a legend, this guy. However, he died because he implemented a sucky tactic. Guys, if you're out at the restaurant, you should always keep your eyes and your focus towards the most high threat area, usually the entrance of that building, right? Otherwise, you're gonna be behind the power curve, because tactics trump skills. So whenever we're building these things, we wanna make sure we're implementing the right tactic for us. Skills goes after that. So we wanna make sure if we were in a contest of our lives that we outrank the other person or enemies, plural. We want to have as much skill as we possibly can. We want to fine-hone our edge so that we are prepared for that outcome. Afterwards, we want to think about what is the best tools for this application, all right? Because if you have the right mindset and you're employing the right tactic and you have really good skills, you do not need the best weaponry on planet Earth. However, if you inverse this like most people do, and they're like, all right, I'm going to be proactive, I'm going to get a gun. They don't know what gun they need, but they get a gun. All right. And then they think, yeah, you know, I should know how to use this. And they start looking at some skills. And they're like, man, maybe I'm not using this the right way. I got to research some tactics. At the end of the day, do they even have the right mindset for that to be working optimally, right? We want to make sure that people are starting off at the foundation, working on a good mindset, building from their tactic skills. At the end of the day, if you don't have the best tool, you can improvise, but might as well get the best tool. And that's going to be much easier whenever you have the skill, you know what to look for, what not to have. Is that making sense so far? Cool. At any point in time, if this is not making sense, raise your hand. There are no stupid questions. Some stupid people, but we won't go there. It's all good. All right. Safety. All right. So gun safety. This is universal firearm safety rules. These are things we're going to utilize each and every time we interact around a firearm. It's not just for the range. If you know them, what is the first rule without looking at the screen? Ah, you looked, didn't you? You looked. Do you know what it is? What is it? What's the first rule? Yes. So we always want to know the condition of our firearm. That's the intent behind this. So even if Ron's a friend and he hands me his gun, he tells me, don't worry, it's unloaded. What should I do? Always check. Okay. He tells me, hey, it's loaded. What should I do?
Check.
Also check. Always know the condition of your firearm. Sometimes we're going to need to clean our guns. We're going to need to store them away. We need to know what the condition is. So big boy rules, that's what it really means behind the intent of the first rule. What's the second rule? It's right there. Yes. This is the laser beam rule. So I've got a laser beam coming out of my handgun right here. Let's say there was an imminent threat for life coming out of this rig right behind us, right? If I was doing my drawstroke, I'm coming out hot and fast. What I don't want to do, I'm going to show this laser beam rule right here, is I don't want to come up and sweep this poor, what's your name, sir?
Rick.
I don't want to sweep Rick, right? I need to be very mindful of this. So I'm going to take a side step so that I have a good presentation. I can come out here. I'm not sweeping anybody in that path. Sometimes you have to know the rule to be able to know when to break the rule. So if you're in your vehicle and there's no other way, you can't get your gun out without sweeping yourself, understand that may be a limitation, but better get your gun out and violate that rule for half a second on yourself rather than somebody else, or whenever you don't have to. So understand that's the intent, is never pointed, always pointed at the point of least destruction, right? Unless I'm up on target with the intent to fire, should not be muzzling anybody, all right? What's the third rule? You're just gonna look at it, aren't you? All right, so the third rule is always keep your trigger finger indexed, right? So not just off the trigger, we wanna keep it indexed on a certain point on that handgun. And the external safety, if you're running one, on until you're up on target with the intent to fire. So here's the rule. You're on target, off safe, on trigger. Off target, on safe, off trigger, which means have your trigger finger indexed right here. All right, we're gonna look at that more. The last one is probably the most important, especially in a dynamic situation, because bullets, do they stop whenever they hit things? It depends, not always, right? If they hit one person, could they go through it and kill somebody behind them? Absolutely. They are still potentially killy on the backside. Remember that? That's a technical term, okay? So handguns, bullets are always, they're not always going to stop when we want them to. So we always need to be sure of what is that target's foreground and background. So this is really important whenever we're thinking about working in and around confines of buildings or house. If we positively ID'd a perp behind our door, are these bullets going to stop whenever they hit that door? No. You could, if you've already positively ID'd them and you know that you have a safe backstop, you could pump rounds right through that door and kill that guy. It's not just what's exposed, it's what you can access. Same thing whenever we're working in and around vehicles, the glass. All right, so if you shoot any glass on any vehicle besides the front windshield, what's gonna happen? Spiderweb, shatter. The front windshield a little bit different because you got the plastic going through there, so bullets can basically change the trajectory. And this is something that even like law enforcement snipers, they'll set two guys up and they'll shoot one person, will shoot the hole, the other person will shoot around through the hole. That's the principle whenever you're shooting through glass, because they understand even shooting a rifle round into the vehicle, trying to get the guy 2 feet behind the glass, that round can deflect and you can miss that target. So whenever you're shooting through barriers, understand that's a limitation. You need to know what your round's capable of. More on that later, but that's the big essence of it. The core 4 universal firearm safety rules. Does anybody have a question on any of that? No, we all good? Okay, you guys should have that memorized now, right? Okay, so don't be violating that. By the way, quick side note, Bad things happen whenever 2 or more of these rules are violated at the same time. Just because somebody got swept does not mean there's probably going to have any kind of safety, like somebody gets shot. Finger on the trigger, somebody gets swept, yeah, bad things happen, right? If you're not aware of your target's background and you're muzzling them because you're not applying those rules, right? That's when bad things happen. So if you're always implementing all 4 of them, you are super safe. Nothing's going to happen unless you're shooting a SIG. Okay. Very good. This is the principles of effective gunfighting, right? So like I said, down throughout the ages, these are the things that, especially with the integration of firearms in armies, this is like the core few for small unit tactics. Shoot, move, and communicate. Who's heard that before? All right, we got 1. Heck yeah. 2? All right, sweet. So they've also added medicate. Shoot, move, communicate, medicate. Right? These are 4 core attributes, but this, as it pertains to shooting, these are things that we want to make sure that we're keeping in mind. So whenever it comes to the skill of shooting, you can break that into a few different subcategories, all right? You can balance it out with speed, but you also need to have accuracy, and there's also the component of weapon manipulation. So let's break those down one at a time really quick. Speed. So in the illustration with Wild Bill Hickok, remember this is a true life story, the young kid who he was going up against, the criminal he was hunting down, he was ultra fast. He was faster than Wild Bill Hickok. But here's the thing, that didn't matter because he didn't have accuracy, right? So some people will tell you that accuracy is king, but it has to be married together with the component of speed as well. Because let's say he did connect one of those rounds, and a lot of people do, then Wild Bill Hickok would have been behind the power curve. He had accuracy, but you also want to have speed as much as possible. So have you guys heard the idea that time is life under critical situations? There's a death clock ticking at some point in time. So if there is an active shooter that jumps up right here, gets out of that vehicle and starts shooting people, the longer it takes to neutralize that person means there is going to be more casualties. The base where I used to work at, Fairchild, just west of Spokane area, is known to have had a active shooter back in the early 2000s, and this guy used an AK to shoot 25 people plus. 25 of them died. He was the last person killed, and he was actually taken out by a military police from 75 yards with a handgun. This guy knew what he was doing, and he applied some of these principles. But here's the thing, is if he was a faster on that reaction time, there could have been several less death tolls in that situation. There are some active shooter situations that you guys have never heard about. Why? Because there was no mass casualty. Some dude was concealed carrying, and hopefully that'll be you guys after today, that you have that personal responsibility. You'll be responsibly carrying, and you're ready and you're equipped to be able to handle something like that down the road. But speed is absolutely a component. Accuracy is very important. However, here's the thing, you want to have a balance. It always, whether you're competition shooting, but especially defensive gunfighting, is a balance between speed and accuracy. If you're all speed, no accuracy, no good. All accuracy, no speed, also no good. It is a balance between the two. Making sense? The other component here is the weapon manipulation. So getting your gun up from your holster up on target, keeping it in the fight, being able to handle malfunction, speed reloads, all the different things that keep this gun up into the fight. Under the weapon manipulation heading, these are core things that are very helpful. Some law enforcement people have died because they don't train with their support side hand. They've never done it. So whenever this arm took a hit in the fight, they pick this up and it's super awkward. Like, anybody ever tried brushing your teeth with your left hand? It's a mess, right? If it's the first time, trying to eat, right? Trying to write your name with your support side hand, it's a different story. If you're not used to it, you're gonna fail on the day under pressure, right? So that's why weapon manipulation is a core component of this, and is going to help you to be both fast and accurate. So key things under the shooting, but wait, there's more, right? So you need to have good movement. Movement is key under critical duress. Movement is also life. Have you guys heard of that? Movement is life. Y'all need to get out more. Sorry, I'm kidding. All right, you guys are good. So movement is going to be very, very helpful in a tactical situation. If you're stagnant, if you stay in one place from the start to the end of the gunfight, you're probably going to take some hits. There's a high likelihood that if you are stagnant, that you're going to become a good target and you're going to receive some of those rounds. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering, so there's an active shooter and somebody else draws his weapon and starts shooting him to take him out. And someone comes in late in the game and thinks that that's the active shooter. Is there any way to prevent that?
Have a little flag says, wait, I'm a good guy. Well, if you're not in all black, matching the standard protocol of most active shooters as either shouting out Ali Akbar or with a rifle mowing down innocent people, if you're the one directing a threat at the other person, then anybody that's got their head screwed on right is probably going to have a better chance at spotting that. The reality is, though, that if you are one of multiple shooters and law enforcement is responding, they know it's not them, then you should be able to put your gun away and not have that. But don't worry about that, because whenever your life's on the line, seconds count, the cops are minutes away, so I wouldn't worry about that. Anyway, movement could be extremely critical, right? So what are the different aspects of movement that you guys might want to incorporate in a tactical consideration?
Wait, say that again.
What kind of movement would be important to employ?
Advance.
Maybe moving forward. So what you're talking about is something that's called press the threat. It is no good for you. It's almost zero advantage. You're basically, from their perspective, you're staying on the X. There's no movement from their point of view. However, this could be a good thing, because if they are presenting a lethal threat to other people that you're trying to save, and you're taking the focus off of them and you're making your own gun, maybe you're too far. Maybe you can't make your gun work at 75 yards like the MP did at Fairchild, taking out that one character. Most people have a really hard time at 75 yards. Actually, that guy did too, and that's kind of a miracle that he put a round in the head at 75. Nobody knows how he did it, only God. However, here's the thing, is that pressing the threat could be the thing to do. Just understand that's not much of an advantage to you unless we're talking about some other tactics. We'll come up in a second. The number one thing is use of cover. What is cover versus concealment? Anybody know?
Anything.
Could be, well, concealment could be anything.
I mean, sorry.
Absolutely. What's the difference? Concealment, cover. Who knows? Yeah, cover will stop the incoming rounds. So this is relative to the bullets that they are shooting at you. So if they're shooting a 22 or a 9mm, it's going to be different than if they're shooting a 30-06 or an AK or a 50 cal or whatever it is. So understand that if we're using a vehicle, what is cover on a vehicle? Generally accepted.
Wheel or the engine.
Good, awesome. So the wheelbase has a lot of metal around it, generally, if they're using metal hubcaps and all that. Also, the engine block has been known to stop a lot of rounds. Everything else, big guess, right? Maybe, maybe not, all right? So use of cover, though, even concealment is helpful. There has been like live encounters you can watch on YouTube, some different things where there's like an active shooting at a store and people are jumping up and down behind bags of Doritos, right? The chip aisle. And the thing is, you can't see them. And you don't think about it in the moment, like, oh, I could just shoot through the bag. Most people don't think of that. So even concealment is better than none at all. Maneuvering. So this is something where if you're getting off the X, even if there's no cover, movement is really key. Even if you have perfect cover, right? You're stuck behind that engine block. It's the most beautiful cover anywhere that you can see. Here's the thing, is that there's going to be an expiration date on that cover too. Just like we talked about that death clock, there's the same idea when it comes to cover. That's not going to be golden all day, every day. They could start to rout you. You could have multiple opponents start to move on your position. This is a standard military maneuver, all right? So maneuvering is very key. You might need to move to another piece of cover, move to the exit, get the heck out of there, whatever it is. These are the core things that you should try to incorporate into your training, and so that it becomes instinctive. You don't have to think about it as much. You just do the right thing. So movement is a key component. The last aspect here is communication. So this is really key whenever you're as a husband and wife and you're responding to something, maybe a bump in the night at your home invasion situation. I have a personal friend who was shot and actually dealt with the situation for a home invasion. Some perp singled him out in the middle of freaking nowhere, Idaho, and actually had a bag of torture implements for his entire family. Total sicko. But thankfully, my friend maneuvered, shot back, and prevailed in this situation. So he's still around today and the other guy is not. But if you are working together with somebody else, you need to be able to communicate key things with somebody on your team. So under fire, if you guys are in a defensive gunfight for your life, what are some key things that you want to communicate? Not everything, right? But what are some core attributes you want to make sure your buddy knows, or your friend or your wife or whatever it is? What are you going to communicate?
Where the perp is.
Where he is. Big one. What else?
And if you're moving.
Okay. So maybe they can cover you. That's big, right? Absolutely. What else? If your gun goes down, you want to tell them you're reloading, you're clearing a malfunction, any and all of the above, right? These are core things that you want to make sure that you're communicating in a timely manner. Also, your condition, right? So if you're down, you take a hit, or you can no longer maneuver because you're protecting somebody else, whatever it is, you want to communicate your condition, the condition of your firearm, Enemy movement, if you see some more, right? Always +1. Combat rule, write it down. If you didn't know it, +1. There's always going to be one more bad guy. So assume that out there. Don't think you got the last one yet. Innocent bystanders. Generally, innocent bystanders are 0 help. Just so you know. All right. Yeah. But one thing that can be a help to you if you're responding to like an active shooter situation is if you have your gun out and you're trying to chase somebody down and you lost visual on them, you could say the presumptive question, where are they, right? And this is something that law enforcement will do, that they don't expect a positive response from people running around crazy in the situation, but they can solicit sometimes some key information on the bad guys. So if you ask, where are they? And you're going to respond, maybe they tell you, that way. Cool. Now you're going down the right track, right? So communication can be all of the above with your buddy, about the enemy, also to innocent bystanders. All these things are the core components, and most people focus on accuracy. That's it. But I want you guys to have a holistic view of things that you should incorporate in your training regimen so that all of this is done correctly and it's hopefully moved to your subconscious. You don't have to use your active mind to think about what should I do in this situation, because the situation is going to require you to think about it and have those right solutions. So you want to know what the right tactic is before time. Also, you want to understand the triad of close quarters combat. So if you guys are, who's done CQB, close quarters battle, room clearing stuff, probably one of the most dangerous sports in the world, all right? There is a high likelihood that you will take some kind of lead coming at you. In fact, they even call those doors fatal funnels. Why? Because 90+% of people, first person through the door, whenever you're expecting somebody, is gonna take some kind of lead. So understand, these are the things that'll help you even whenever you are behind the power curve. You wanna implement as much as possible surprise, speed, violence of action. All right, so surprise, the first thing that goes into this, whenever possible, is you want to surprise the enemy. So if somebody comes up on you and they draw a gun, they present a lethal threat, are they expecting you to respond? Even if they are they expecting you to respond the way that you do? We want to disrupt their OODA loop. Who's familiar with OODA loop? Observe, orient, decide, and act. We don't have time to get into it right now, but basically you can disrupt that so that you are ahead of the power curve and you are acting instead of reacting. You want to force them into the reaction cycle because action is always faster than reaction. Also, shock and awe. So surprise. Whenever possible, if you can flip the tables on them, do something counterintuitive, then they are reacting to it. Even if it wasn't the fastest thing or the most violent of action, if they're just not expecting it, it could take them an extra delay, however small, that can be added to your response time, not theirs. So surprise is something key. We want to integrate that at every aspect. So part of this is the way that we behave and the way that we present ourselves. So if you present yourself like a badass, I don't know why I'm blowing up my chest right now, but if you look like somebody who's going to be a problem to deal with, right? And then somebody, if they're coming up after you and they're going to hunt you down, they're going to actually continue to target you. There's no surprise whenever I fight back. They kind of taking that for granted. All right. However, if you look like someone who's not necessarily going to fight back, not necessarily going to respond with speed and violence of action, whenever you do, it's going to be a surprise factor to them. So you want to use shock and awe whenever possible. Speed. Time is life. We already started talking about the death clock starting to tick, right? Under critical duress, the longer it takes for us to implement that solution, the more time they have to do bad things. So we want to reduce that as much as possible. We want to be as fast as humanly possible, preferably faster, right? Also, we want to limit their response time. So you guys, whenever you're doing close quarters combat, there's two main different ways that you can flow, talking broad scope tactic. All right, there's the way that you're doing like using tactical proficiencies, use of cover, your pine corners, you're being quiet, you're being deadly, you're checking every corner. And then there's like moving as fast as possible to the sound of the guns, which incurs huge risk on the response, right? But if you have an active shooter at a school and you hear bang, 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 every time you hear a gunshot, that could be some poor innocent leaving this world. So cops will generally beat feet and go straight there, which means that they're not checking all the corners. They got huge areas that they don't know, but they know where one threat's at and that's where they're moving to. So this is the same thing whenever you have other people that you love, maybe inside your house. If you come back at night, what are you going to implement? Are you going to be focused on the surprise factor or the speed? All right. So there's two different approaches, and whenever possible, we want to line all of them up, but at best 2 out of 3. So speed is always going to be good. And then violence of action. So this is sheer ferocity. Once you start the fight, you cannot stop. There should be no Hollywood good guy kind of gives the bad guy a reprieve at the end of the movie. He's like, all right, stand back up. No, there should be none of that. There's like pound him into the ground like David. Whenever you run up to that Goliath, you make sure he's dead and gone. You take his head off. All right. That's what violence of action is about. Now, I'll tell you a real quick story about how this worked recently doing CQB at a place called Personal Security Operations Center down in the valley. So anybody who wants to practice that, that's the place to go do it. They got 2 shoot houses right together. They got all the lasers and the sim rounds and all the fun toys. So I was there practicing being the bad guy with another buddy. And these guys were coming, practicing, kicking in this door and clearing this room, right? So what we did, we snuck some furniture right up against the door. And they weren't expecting that, right? So they come in and they're kind of timid, and you see the door kind of like, bam, 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 and they're just like struggling to get in. We just massacred them, all right? They had no idea, right? Second time, they were expecting something, right? And so what they did is they changed the script. They used violence of action on us. And whenever they hit that door, it was like, boom, and they're through and they're coming in, and they just, even though we had our guns on the door and we're expecting this attack, they came in so fast, so hot, they clearly took us both out. And the only thing that changed was this aspect right here, violence of action. All right. So when you're behind the power curve, you need to have all of that, but as much as possible, we want to incorporate surprise and speed too. Cool. All right. Awesome. So those are the principles. Now, we want to make sure all of our training are in line with those tactics, because tactics trump skill. So make sure that we're doing those things. Whenever it comes to our firearm, we want to make sure that we are intimately familiar with that. Now, why we have a picture of a semi-automatic standard strike fire modern handgun and not a revolver is just simply the fact that they're better. Okay, besides that, so recently we did a handgun primer for our church down in Spokane, and 40 people showed up. And 2 of them, actually, they bring me this rusty old revolver from their grandpa, right? I understand these people are like 80. And they're like, what is this? I'm like, it's not something I'd bet my life on. That's what that is. You want to have something that is reliable, and hopefully it's magazine fed, unless you're Jerry Miculek. Anybody know who Jerry Miculek is? Hands? Anybody? He's got a world record in speed reloading revolvers. Super cool. You got to check it out. But if you're not him, I do recommend this, because that easy, you can stick in another mag of however many, 10, right? I would say 18. Hopefully you got 18 round mags, something like that. That's much, much faster and easier than speed reloading a revolver. For those of you who still like revolvers, I'm sorry. However, that can also work, but this is going to be a little bit easier. So basically what we do, and like I said, this is the start for handgun 1, right? So we want to make sure that everybody is familiar with it. And if we were at the range right now, what we would do is we'd had each and every person take down their firearm, make sure they know how to put it back together again. So at the end of the class, not everybody's calling me at the same time, like, I gotta clean my gun. How does that work again? Like, we show them in the class. They're capable, they're confident afterwards. So we want to make sure that we're familiar with each component of our handgun and know what each part does. And that way, whenever we get to it, you guys know what we're talking about. So I'm just going to do a quick pop quiz. You can use the cheat sheet if you want to, but I'm going to ask some questions. You guys tell me the answers. I'm expecting you to answer some of this, okay? So what's the red part here?
Slide.
The slide, awesome. What's all the black? The frame, awesome. What is this part right here? And the rear sight. And then you also have, what would this part right here be? The chamber area, okay? What is this part protecting the bang switch? Trigger guard, excellent. All of this back here is the grip, and you have the front strap and the back strap. Also up in here, what is this area called? The tang or the beaver tail, all right? So whenever we're gripping it, we wanna make sure we say a high tang grip. That means we're choking up as high as possible here. What does this button do? Yeah, magazine release. So whenever I press it, it pops out. Also, you're gonna have a button right here. So you have, what is that guy? No, actually, the Glocks do not have external safeties besides the trigger. They have 2 internal. But a lot of safeties would be located right here, generally. And this is a slide stop, slide release, because it does both. So whenever we lock that chamber to the rear, we're using that by pushing that button up. All right. Let's see. Some of them have a grip safety here as well. You might have a safety selector right here. Some guns have them ambidextrously. So if you're shooting right side, left side, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. If you're shooting a standard right-handed catered gun with your left side, then you're gonna have to use a little bit different weapon manipulation, maybe get a little bit more creative. Something to think about if you're choosing your next handgun. Some of them will have a grooved out slot right here so that you can add a red dot down the road. What is this area called? Your rail. Okay, so if you want to add a light or something else on that afterwards, you need to have a rail. Some guns do not have a rail here. Sometimes it's the same model and they rail, no rail. Okay, choose rail, more is better. All right, so just some different things to think about whenever you're considering your handgun. And we're not covering, yes ma'am.
I got the first stupid question.
Oh no, please hit me.
I've got a CZ 9mm. Where's the hammer?
Yes, okay, so you have a hammer back here, right? So that would be either a, well, let me think of the right terminology here. Hammers, you have single action and double action, right? So is your CZ, can you actually pull the hammer back with the trigger and then it fires? Or do you have to cock it first?
Not familiar enough with
Okay, all right, something to check out. So a lot of SIGs will have a double action capability. So whenever you're squeezing this trigger, it's cocking this hammer back and it takes a while. And then whenever it gets all the way back here, boom, it releases it and it fires. That's double action mode. Some revolvers are only double action. However, 1911s, SIGs, a lot of revolvers, you can cock this guy back and then it's set up to single action mode. So you just have to trip the S.E.R.E and the hammer falls forward, it fires really fast and easy. So it means you have a much lighter trigger. Does that make sense? Okay, cool.
but these guns.
What's a S.E.R.E? It's a small mechanical lever that releases the hammer.
Bring it if the hammer catches on.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Internal working part. There is no hammer. This is a strike fire handgun. So a lot of handguns have gone to this so that there is no hammer and it kind of removes that dual operation mode. There's no single double action. It's just pull the trigger and it fires.
What's hitting? Oh, okay.
There's
Gotcha.
still a firing pin, but it's all internal.
A little more accurate.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Awesome. Very cool. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about how do we integrate our handgun? Where should that be in the stack? And do you guys have a PACE plan? What's a PACE plan? I'm so glad you asked. PACE stands for Primary Alternate Contingency Emergency. So this comes from the military, right? Anything that's really important. Talking about medical plan, talking about communications, talking about anything like your survivability, if you have your survival tools, anything that is going to be absolutely necessary to save your life in a critical situation. You should have your most reliable, most effective means that you go to. So in a defensive gunfighting situation, hopefully that's this, all right? So should be absolutely 100% reliable, right? So hopefully nobody has a high point. If that's you, again, I'm sorry. All right. So make sure that you have a primary that you can count your life on. It's set up for success. After that, you have an alternate. This is your next best killie option. Remember, technical term, next best option. And it could be your best option in a close encounter. So if I have something like this and I have an opponent right here, what's going to be better to go to, this or this? Statistically, this is faster and more deadly. Stab for shot. All right. So this is probably a better option up close. As soon as I have distance, back to this. So this could change, but generally this is a primary flow. Primary, this gun goes down for whatever reason. I'm out of bullets, hard malfunction. What do I go to? Next best killie option. After that, what do I go to after that? You have a tertiary or third response, which could be a flashlight that you use maybe to blind them, maybe to hit them on the head with if you have a blunt force tool. Maybe it could be a tactical pen or your grandma's frying pan, but you're probably not going to carry your grandma's frying pan around, right? These are things that we carry on our person. Last one is emergency. So what's your emergency? That's up to you. You can set it up however you want. Some people carry 17 knives and 2 handguns. I'm not one of those guys. I have 1 handgun, I have extra mags, I have 1 good knife. My emergency is my bare hands and feet. So if I have no tools, down to this baby, lightning and thunder. All right, all right. But keep it in mind, medical is another good thing to add to your guys' everyday carry, because statistically, everybody here is more likely to actually use your medical equipment to save somebody's life than you would be to draw down on a bad guy and have to end his. So life-preserving methods, medical does take priority, just so you guys know that, all right? But we're here about gunfighting, so we're gonna press. All right, everyday carry considerations, different things that you could carry and ways to carry them. So there's a whole host of different ways. You guys have probably seen a lot of these. But whenever you're thinking about setting your own setup for success, we want to make sure that we have first, it is purpose-driven. We teach tactical knife fighting. And I can't tell you how many people have come through our class. They got a tiny little cheap, crappy knife from Walmart. And they're like, here we go. This is my defensive knife. And they were just using it to cut up a bunch of cardboard, and that thing is dull as hell. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing with your life? Purpose-driven, all right? So we want to make sure whatever we carry for self-defense, it is purpose-driven. That, again, we're not going to grab some high point. We're going to grab something that's quality that we know can save our life and send bullets down range, right? Okay, good, very good. If you don't know what high point is, you're not missing out. Speed, we want to make sure that we are set up for success. Again, so what is most concealable is not the most fastest, generally. So nobody's going to ever guess that you have a gun in your purse, but how long does it take to extract that weapon from your purse? Statistically too long, which is why I'm a huge advocate for having it on your person and making sure that you can get to it fast. Because remember, that death clock could be ticking. Maybe your first inclination that something's wrong is you hear a gunshot over there, or somebody just kicked in the front door, or you can play it up, right? Fast. We want to be as fast as possible. Concealability. This is also a key consideration, because most of us probably do not want to project that we are someone that the bad guy is going to have to address when they do bad things. So we're probably not open carrying, we're probably concealing. For concealability, you can do a lot of different things. Ankle holsters, onto the arm holsters, again, purse holsters. If you're a man, you can have a purse too, it's okay, all right? If it has a gun in it, that's the only caveat. But you wanna make sure that it's concealable, and for your handgun, concealability inside the waistband, appendix is great for a lot of people, especially if you are fit and agile and mobile and young and especially good looking. That's a joke, don't worry about it. Some people, their body function, it does not work for them. No, I was talking about you, man. You're good. All right, so if it doesn't work for you here, that's all right. As long as you're carrying it somewhere, just understand concealability, this is great. Because I can see whenever I'm printing, I just look down, I can see if this is showcasing. Whereas if it's back here, it's very hard for me to know when I'm exposing this to somebody else. Dual hand access. So we're gunfighting, right? Which means we gotta use our tools to save other people's lives, which means that if I'm always counting on this and this fails on the day because it's broken, shot up, burned, or engaging with somebody, can I actually grab this with my offhand and use it? The other thing is if you can't get it out and get a good grip in one draw, you can also grab it out, stick it back in the holster, then get a good grip on it. Or you can grab it out, you can stick it between your legs, then get a good grip. You can put it between your arm, you can then get a good grip. Or there are options. As long as you can access this from your support side hand, that is key. All right, if you can't, carry 2 guns. No, that's why.
Back to reach part of that shock and awe.
There you go, man. He knows what's up. All right. Reachable from various positions. So how many times do we find ourselves sitting in our daily lives? In our vehicle. Right now, everybody else is sitting. If something were to come up right now, can you draw from seated position? What about if you were knocked down to the ground? How many fights in the real world go to the ground? Okay. So if you're carrying back here, can you get to it whenever you're in your vehicle with the seatbelt on, whenever you're on the ground? By the way, some people carry a large frame handgun back here in the smaller back. They get thrown down on a hard surface in the real world, uncontrolled fall, break their back. It's a bad deal.
That happened too.
Okay. Yeah, it happens, man. Happens. So I do not recommend carrying the smaller back. Again, I like to do the appendix because that works for me. We're talking about concealed carry, right? This changes whenever you're doing like full battle rattle, war kit on the range, all that fun stuff. Comfort. Okay, so We are creatures of comfort. I hate to admit it, but you need less discipline whenever your holster is extremely comfortable. This is the most comfortable one I've ever found on the market. And it's because of the design. They use neoprene to kind of put a gap between the hard metal bits into your soft squishy parts. So you have this beautiful little sleeve here, so it doesn't hurt whenever the gun presses into you. Otherwise, if you're using all some hard material like Kydex, right, you want to make sure that the bottom edge is rounded off and it's not just a straight point, because otherwise you'll find it digging into your leg in different positions. This is for concealment, right? If you're having outside the waistband, not as much of a deal. By the way, this is made by Alien Gear. I'm no sponsor of them, but if you want to go in their shop, they're in Post Falls. You can walk in, you can check out a bunch of holsters, but this one is one I've carried for a long time, and it's the most comfortable one I had. What is it? Probably like 60, 80 bucks, something like that. More than Uncle Mike's, for sure. Consistency. The other thing we want to think about is some people will have like a little clip on their handgun and they stick it in their pocket, all right? Or they won't have a clip at all, it'll just be in their pocket. Or they'll wear sweatpants, and I don't know what people are into nowadays. You want to have something consistent, all right? Each and every time you grab for that gun, it is right there. Not catered to the side, not rocked this way where you're like guessing. No, it's right there. And this talks about reaction time, right? So we want to have consistency. Whenever you're running, jumping, diving, all the things that you do in everyday life, it should still be there, all right? This one, by the way, we're going to talk about here. Retention. This one does not have retention. So if I slack up, it's going to fall out whenever it's upside down. However, I've dive rolled, jumped, run, bunch of stuff, and this has never fallen out for me. So for me, it's still fine. But whenever it comes to retention, this is more important whenever you have an outside the waistband holster, such like this. This is the reason why law enforcement and military. So if you are busting through windows, climbing over ladders, fighting Chinese in some foreign land, right? You should have some kind of retention, right? You want to make sure your gun is absolutely there when you need it. We're not all about speed. It just has to be there. However, for law enforcement, they would need to have some level of retention so some perp doesn't come up and grab it and then use it on them. So that's where you get into levels of retention. Level 1 is simply that there is something keeping it in there. Sometimes it could be a button, it could be a hood, it could be a rocking motion, it could be a lever, whatever it is. Whenever you start stacking those up, that becomes now a level 2 or a level 3. So some of them you have to push down a button, open up the hood, rock it back, and then you pull up on that. And some perp is not going to know that, and they're going to get confused. And whenever you feel that action, that means you know the fight's on, right? Gives you that time. Retention is important whenever you got the gun outside the holster and you're open carrying. Other than that, it's down to your material, comfortability, reliability, all that. Cool? All right. Any questions? You guys good? Moving on. Weapon upgrades, my favorite, all right? So, did you know some guy actually got taken out by a suppressed handgun in New York recently? Some insurance CEO got shot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, some dude had a suppressed handgun. Actually induced a malfunction because he hadn't tested with it, and suppressors can do that with handguns because weight works and things. Don't move. Don't do that. If you're not SEAL Team 6 or somebody trying to act like them, suppressors for handguns, not a huge applicability. I still have one. I like to pretend I am, but no, I would never use it for a defensive gunfight. This is not a good weapon upgrade. But if you were to try to enhance your handgun capabilities, what's the first thing you should do to your handgun? What's the first thing? What would you like to add to your handgun and make it?
Light?
A light. Okay, what would you say a light?
Dark. If it's dark.
Yes. So I resisted this for the longest time. Lights on handguns. And then somebody finally told me, you know, it's dark roughly half the time, right? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I need a light. Even during the daytime, you go 2 rooms deep with no lights in the house, it can be as dark as on a moonless night, right? First, you need to identify your perp before you can acquire them and engage them. So identifying with a weapon light means that I don't have to juggle another light in the other hand. Do I have another light for the other hand? Absolutely. That can also be a force multiplier. I can blind somebody without pointing my gun at them. That's cool, right? However, having a weapon light on your gun and it points where my gun does means I can now use single hand manipulation if I have to, and my two-handed is that much faster. So I recommend a light first and foremost, 100%. After that, you do you. I like to run a red dot, and I have also resisted this for the longest time. However, I found that I am both faster and more accurate, especially at distance. And here's the cool thing, low light situations. When are most defensive encounters? Low light or no light situations, absolutely. That's whenever the bad guys like to come out and pray. That's why we should have some kind of illumination on our sights so that we are not a hope and a prayer and just point shooting without any reference points. A red dot is helpful because it is one reference point instead of 3 glowing sights that you have to line up. So in the dark under duress, that can be a little bit confusing. It's still possible, and I do recommend it. If you are going to get sights that glow in the dark, what kind of sight should you choose? Somebody knows the answer. Tritium, thank you, sir. Tritium glow in the dark without any light at all. So you're not looking for something called fiber optic where it enhances the current ambient light. That's great for competition, known setting, outdoors. However, defensive gunfighting, you want tritium. All right, you want something that's radioactive down here. Sorry. So that is a good option. I prefer red dots because they give you more capabilities. Besides that, a flashlight. Should you have a laser on your gun? Any fanboys for lasers on their gun?
Built in my LCP.
Yes, absolutely. And you can also get these from Crimson Laser or Crimson Trace laser grips. You can add them to handguns. I'm not a big fan of them simply for the fact that whenever you have a laser dedicated on your handgun, you guys see this right here? No, neither do I. Under full light situations, it's difficult to see where that laser is pointing. The other thing is it leads towards, I'm now seeing where's my laser at, and I'm trying to follow off the laser rather than referencing my sights. So red dot good, laser bad.
They have one
That's my opinion.
too.
Yes.
In dusty situations, it draws the line right back to you.
Okay,
You
absolutely.
can see it from the side. You can see where the laser's coming from.
All right, so you're projecting.
Laser and red dot's the same thing?
No. So this is a red dot sight or a holographic image, as opposed to a laser that's actually projecting that laser like this is towards that target.
Oh, and one more comment
Sure.
too. If you get like a light,
Uh-huh.
make sure it fits your holster.
Oh, yes. Yep. So it has to marry up with that holster combination. So usually I run a TLR7A, and that's from Streamlight. A lot of holsters will fit that with a whole host of guns, but you have to get married up to your holster, which is a good point. All right, guys, we are pressed for time, but we're going to bomb through this really fast. The core 3, helping you guys out with being able to be fast and accurate. Remember, in defensive gunfighting, it's all about being fast, also accurate. So it starts off with a good stance. Does anybody know what kind of stance you use predominantly whenever you're shooting? There's 2 main kinds, right? So there's the weaver, where if my target's this way, I'm going to be bladed off towards it, and then I'm going to use what's called a push-pull, all right, in my grip. And so what happens here is that I'm always going to be canted off to the side, as opposed to isosceles, where I'm squared up with that target. My knees, hips, and shoulders are facing that target. This is going to help with a lot of things. So highest level shooters have gone to this one for multiple reasons. First, science, all right? But also it helps us to point with our bodies. So it means less off of our eyes and more off of our physical structure. So that's a huge help. Also, it helps with movement, wearing body armor, CQB, other things. However, you're just standing and shooting, it's still better than the traditional bladed off or weaver stance. So whenever we do our practices, we focus on a modified isosceles stance. Next thing, grip. You need to have a good stance to be able to mitigate one of 2 influences on the gun. So whenever we shoot this thing, it's going to have what's called what?
Recoil.
Recoil, which is the rearward inertia of that gun. The other thing is, because we're gripping it here, you're going to have a little bit of muzzle flip or muzzle rise right here, and that's going to be controlled by our grip around that gun. So stance defeats recoil, grip controls muzzle flip. Those are 2 key aspects. For our grip, we want to make sure we have as much friction, leverage, and tension as possible. Guys, I could tell you all day about it. I'd love to. We're running out of time. Those are the 3 big things. Whenever you're practicing, you want to make sure that's all in place. Vision. Whenever we are shooting, we want to make sure that we have a good sight picture, good sight alignment. So what does that mean? Basically, you want to make sure that you have equal height and equal light right here with our front sight. So our front sight is typically the focus, especially whenever we have a distant target or a smaller target. So we will have an enhanced front sight focus or hard front sight focus. We want to make sure that there is equal light, or called light bars, and level. So it is not higher than or lower than your rear notch. That is a decent sight picture. And we want to make sure that that is cutting the target in half. Wherever we want that bullet to go is the top of that front sight, unless, of course, you're shooting SIGs, which is another conversation. But that's typically the way that things roll out, okay? So that is your vision component. Do we want to use point shooting or sighted fire? Well, what's the difference? First one, sighted fire is great for running bullseye drills, shooting at longer distances, or like I said, a smaller target. So if that perp sticks his foot behind cover and you just see that much of him, you're like, all day, baby, you're mine. So you focus in on that hard front sight focus and drill him through the foot. And then whenever more of it is exposed, you drill the rest of him, okay? All right, but that is going to be for sighted fire. Point shooting is more of a reactive thing. So within the confines of defensive gunfighting, you usually don't see that much distance, all right? Unless you have an active shooter situation, which is statistically small percentage, you're probably going to have a fight at under what range? What do you guys think?
10 feet, 20 feet.
Okay, so decent guess there. So 20 feet, which is 7 yards, is about 90% or more of gunfights. So from here to the back of the tent, right now, under this, okay? Now, 3 yards or under is still a large percentage, almost 80% of most gunfights, which is from me to you. This is a majority, mostly not past the back of the tent. So for that, do we need to have sighted fire, or can we simply point shoot? And that is referencing basically making sure that the target is surrounding your gun whenever you pull the trigger. The answer is, ding, 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 you guessed it. It's point shooting for most situations, as long as you have some idea where those sights are at, or at least your gun is aligned with where you're naturally pointing. So you have a good grip and your grip does not look like that, or like this. When you pull the bang switch, hey, it's going where you're pointing, where you want it to go, which means we can point shoot. So that is a key attribute. And then we're going to touch on briefly dry fire and then turn you guys loose for the rest of it. Dry fire rules. Whenever we were practicing, the top competitors in the shooting space, we're talking Olympic gold medal winning athletes, they do more dry fire than they ever do live, and they have no budget. All right, we're talking like they could be all day, every day at the range. They do sometimes 5, sometimes 9 to 1 dry fire to live fire shots. Why? Because you can master the art in your basement at home without ever firing a live round. As long as you know what right feels like and looks like, you're actually gonna get good impulses off of shooting your gun without any ammo. So dry fire rules. Whenever you're doing that, like I said, if you want to, email right there and I'll send you a PDF later on our top 10 recommended dry fire drills, so you're making the most of your time. Always make sure that all ammo is out of the room. Why do we say that?
So there's no accident.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I can't tell you how many people. So there's 2 people that are dangerous in the gun world. Absolute newbie, beginners that don't know what they don't know. And then there's the veteran who's been around it all of their life and they're super complacent, right? And they're like, I had a call from a buddy, really funny. This is like 2-3 years ago. And he called me all panicked and he's like, I don't know what to do. I just shot my gun. I'm like, did you hurt anybody? He's like, I don't think so. I don't know. I was like, well, where's your bullet? He's like, I think it's in my wall. I hope it didn't go through to the neighbor. I'm like, well, find out. Like, what are you calling me? Like, always make sure ammo's out of the room so you don't have accidents. Abide by the firearm universal safety rules, not just for the range, they are universal, all right? So you're not pointing at people whenever you're doing dry fire. Guys have been killed by this. I was talking with a National Guards dude at a class a couple of weeks ago, and they didn't abide by this rule, and so sad. Somebody shot a buddy, killed him through the head, right? Because they didn't apply this rule. Always make sure dry fire, still a weapon. You want to know the condition of the weapon, but we're still not violating those other rules, right? Okay, very important. Ensure safe backstop. So again, bullets go through things, right? So you want to make sure that whatever you're pointing at is not going to be a dangerous area. For have effective practice, we're not just going to do a bunch of stuff with our gun. We're going to have a defined purpose. We are going to focus on one thing. And again, I'm running out of time, but generally what we do is we focus on drawstroke. The number one most crucial weapon manipulation to get your gun up on target to be able to engage that threat is going to be getting it from your holster up to full presentation, prepped, ready to fire. So how do you do that? Well, that's one thing that you can focus on in your dry fire practice. Try to get that time from in the holster, the first shot on target, as low as possible. Statistic, pop quiz. What do you think the standard law enforcement officer across the US, what's his standard time from the holster to first shot on target. How long does it take him?
10 minutes.
Thanks, Drew. What do you guys?
1.7 seconds.
You're close. It's between 1.5 to 2 seconds. All right. So if you are sub 2 seconds, you are law enforcement standards, which is not great. All right. However, if you are 1 second or sub, you are competition level. So there is a lot to gain in the gap between 1 and 2 seconds. All right. If you are less than half a second, you're like world par, right? The fastest guy ever in recorded history took 0.02 seconds or 200ths of a second. And you watch the video and you still can't believe it. Yeah, that was a cowboy shooter. Woo, ha, ha. All right. Always focus on the fundamentals, right? Masters never don't do the fundamentals. So make sure whenever you're practicing, you guys ever heard that practice makes perfect? It's a lie. Practice makes permanent. So perfect practice makes perfect. You gotta make sure you're doing the right thing. Cool. Call your shots, switch your number where that shot breaks. Where's my sights? Did it go click and I was off target? Did it go click early? Did it show up, have some wait time, then go click? Where was that shot? Call your shots whenever you're taking them. Practice frequently. This is a thing where it's a perishable skill, which means you should be doing it more often and not too long. So it's better to do 15 minutes daily than 4 hours on the weekend. What do you got, sir?
What advice do you have for people that can't afford ammo?
Yeah. Well, first, get a good job. Afford ammo, right? You need to know what right feels like and looks like. But after that, you can do a lot of dry fire, right? 5 to 1, 9 to 1. It's all good, man. And then there's more, but we're out of time. So what we're going to leave off with is everybody's favorite slide. The summary. This is where you guys get to tell me what you learned, what you took away, feedback. What did we talk about at the very beginning? What is the capability pyramid?
Mentality.
I'm not getting anything from you today. Mentality. It starts with mentality, right? That's the foundation. We need to have a solid mentality. From there, it progresses to what?
Tactics.
Tactics, because tactics trump skills. You've heard it here. You've heard it from other better people before, probably. Skills, next. And then at the very top, we're doing what? Then we get the right tools, okay? So try not to invert that. Safety brief for firearm universal safety rules. First one is what?
Always load.
Yeah, guns always loaded. You always know the condition of your firearm. Second one is good. Never point your gun at something you do not intend to destroy. Number 3.
Don't look behind your target.
Oh, that's the 4th one. You're almost there. Keep your finger off of the trigger. Weapon on safe until you're up on target with the intent to fire. The 4th one's always be aware of your target's foreground and background. So, very good. Principles of effective fighting. What did we talk about there? A lot of stuff and things. You guys remember it?
Lightning and thunder. I remember that.
Lightning and thunder. Yeah, all right, cool. We talked about speed, surprise, violence of action, right? And this is incorporating the 3 for small unit tactics, which is shooting, moving, communicating. We should incorporate that into our practice so we're doing the right thing. Everyday carry, considerations, and upgrades. What's the first thing you guys are all going to go out and buy? A flashlight, hopefully, right? And the holster that goes with it. If you guys need a really comfortable holster, which one did we recommend?
Alien.
Uncle Mike's, get out of here. Yeah, you're right. So this one is alien gear. I do like it. I don't get any commission on the side. I should talk to him. I should get a kickback to him. What's that?
Mike being pushing.
Mike didn't, he's not getting nothing. Stance, grip, and vision. We ran through it because we were running out of time, but these are the core essentials, the fundamentals to make sure that you guys are two things we care about. Fast, what's the other one? And accurate. It's always a balance. It's always a balance between those two. And then we would have gone through the drawstroke. We did hit dry fire stuff, and this is for you guys so that you can take those skills home. Again, if you want the PDF, it's free to you. I just need your email, and then we'll tell you when other classes happen. There's a little unsubscribe button at the bottom. You could just take it and then like delete, right? It's up to you. Just so you guys know, the next 2 classes that we're running are in June. They are Tactical Carbine Level 1 and Level 2. So this is the fighting rifle stuff that helps. If you are community minded, you're a patriot, all right? You want to defend your community and your home better advantage, learn how to use your weapon in that kind of context. That's level 1 stuff. Level 2 is all about the shooting while moving, communicating, use of cover, different positions, a whole bunch of fun stuff. I'm actually thinking I'm going to probably put a night vision course on the end of this one or at the end of this one. So anybody who has night vision, wants to roll out, has a light on their rifle, use that. It's just going to be like whoever's coming to classes will do extra fun stuff and things. You don't need to have night vision to come to the course. We kind of like an intro. So if you're thinking about it in the back of your head, should I get night vision? And you look at your budget and you're like, yeah, forget about it. But if you're like, no, I'm thinking about it, this is a great course to go to as well. So if you're considering that, we got flyers up here with QR codes. You can sign up today before it sells out, because it will sell out, prophetically speaking. And then also we have flyers, brochures, business cards, a whole bunch of stuff. Guys, I've been Michael. This is ARC. Handgun, defensive gunfighting primer. Hope you enjoyed. Anybody have any questions? Nasty comments, anything?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, it's been a pleasure. Good to see you guys. If you want any more, I'm going to be in that tent tonight at 4 p.m. for situational awareness. You don't want to miss it. If you do, you won't be situational aware. Cool.